Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch and YouTube. And if you are looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today, we are doing chapter 65 of The Captain's Heart. Gralgiran stood in the archway, watching Jeremy work among the other technicians. The first few days had been rough to listen to his hard talk after the shifts, but he'd stopped complaining. Gralgiran had still stayed away from engineering to avoid giving the impression on him or Alexianakaran that he was judging either's behavior. "Are you checking in on him?" his friend said, taking position next to Gralgiran. "Or me?" "Neither. But since you are here, how is he doing?" Alexianakaran sighed. "He's not terrible. He's not horrible. He clearly understands the basics of the technology, but I sometimes think he purposely refuses to acknowledge my rank. That hunter you have looking after him had to keep him from doing other unauthorized repairs a few times. I didn't assign him to Jer. They're friends." Alexianakaran shrugged. "Then he's lucky to have a friend like him. I wouldn't have the patience to constantly remind him technicians report to me, and I decide if now is the time to do the repairs. I can hear the resentment in his voice each time he has to report in." He sighed. "But once Arthur does the work, what he does is good. Like I said, he understands the basics of the technology." "I had no doubt." His friend snorted. "I'm sure of that. If you aren't checking in on us, why are you standing there, watching that heart of yours have fun instead of working?" Alexianakaran was right that Jeremy seemed to be having a good time with the other technicians. There was a decent amount of shouldering and hip checking. "Have you become an engineer who demands his technician be all dour? Or are you saying Jer's neglecting his work?" "Ha, him? Neglect? I certainly can't fault him his work ethics, other than respecting me. Most shift end that his friend has to drag him out. I think that if not for that, he'd work all shifts." The technicians had heard the outburst, and while most returned to what they had been doing, Jeremy hurried to step away from Turek, Salminial, and another technician. "I doubt it, but he would stay until he felt the work was finished, regardless of if it was uh, already to approved standards or not. Yeah, well, he needs to learn what he thinks is correct doesn't matter." Jimmy looked in their direction before focusing on the panel. Alexander Caran sighed. "Just go to him and tell him I'm not going to prevent him from having a good time while he works. And if you're going to give him that good time, there's an alley 3 intersections that way. And have him back here in an hour. I don't want him to have any excuses to work shifts. I'm not supervising him." His friend headed to the stairs. I need to account for the fact I need to account for the healing of his injury. So yeah, he had a cane before, now he's barely limping. And Galgeran toward his heart. "You aren't in trouble," Turek Selminial was saying, when Galgeran was close enough to hear. "We are ahead of schedule. That's what the engineer looks at when evaluating performance. If we have fun in that time, if we have fun in that time, that's fine." Yeah, fun is a part of working efficiently, he confirmed, causing Jeremy to startle. "Captain," the other technician greeted him. "Technician," he replied, "has my heart been behaving himself?" Jeremy hung his head. "I swear, that wasn't what it looked like. I wouldn't do that to you." "It looked like you were having an enjoyable time." Gregory was surprised at what felt like an out-of-proportion reaction. Jeremy turned, and when he looked at him, Gregory couldn't shake the sense he had to force himself to. We're just goofing around, I swear. They all know I'm yours, and even if one of them had made advances, I'd have turned them down since I'm with you. Oh, all right. He wasn't sure what else to say. Clearly, them being together was important, but why Jeremy felt it meant he needed to abstain from a good time with friends if he felt like it was odd. Are you here checking in on me? Jeremy asked with a hint of suspicion. Gralgiran chuckled. I just wanted to see you. We're in transit and it's quiet, so I felt like making sure you were fine. Inviting him to an alley had been among the options, but now he wasn't sure he'd be able to convince him, Alexiana Karan, would be fine with it. To make sure you hadn't stopped complaining about the engineer because you thought I minded. Jeremy searched his face, then relaxed. No, he's fine. A bit stuck up and definitely too full of himself, but I've dealt with worse, and to be fair to him, he's not treating me any differently than the others. Speaking of which, he motioned to the window where the engineer stood, watching them. We should get back to work. He isn't, but Jeremy had already turned to the board. A look at Turek Salminial got him a shrug. Clearly, Jeremy's friend had caught as little of this scent as he had. He left them to their work. To their work, and consider what to do next. The administrative side was dealt with for the day, and unless something happened, his presence on the bridge wouldn't affect anything. He could see which of his friend was available for a meal, or he put the earpiece in and located the name on his tablet. Ral, the ambassador greeted him. What can I do for you? Queric, I was wondering if you had some time. I have questions about Earthers. Your time among them might have given you answers to. I'm finishing a report, then I was planning on going to a training hall for some exercise. Which one? I can join you there. Gralgiran caught his opponent's arm, turned, and brought her down to the mat, holding her there. He looked at Kurigral, who was fighting a male with short black fur who was keeping the ambassador on his toes. He pulled the female to her feet and took position. This time she came at him with a series of kicks, forcing him to step back until he reached the edge of the fighting circle. When he went on the offensive, she was quick to step aside, then had him on his back with a satisfied grin. When she pulled him up, Kurigral stood, watching, his opponent nowhere to be seen. Thank you for the match, he told her and joined his friend. Feel like sharing a shower? He offered as they headed for the lockers. I do, the male answered, but I hope you don't mind if I prefer it be in one of our apartments. Training hall showers aren't as clean as they want you to think. I'm certain maintenance does a good job of it, but I'm fine with your apartments. With our apartments. Yours are closer. Quirk held him in place, panting. You are, Gralgiran panted, more assertive than I expected. The male nuzzled through the mane. And I expected you to fight back harder. I hope I didn't disappoint you too much, then. He turned to face his friend. I like assertiveness. Surprised, nothing more. I like my sex happening, not happening in specific ways. Then maybe I can see about showing you some assertiveness once we've caught our breath. Kurgiral laughed. Do hunters get special treatment to be able to go again after catching your breath? I'll need slightly longer. Gralgiran pulled the male against him. You can answer my questions in the meantime. You said they were about Earthers. I don't know how much more than what's in the text I'll be able to tell you. It's about relationships. Jer seems uncomfortable with any time he looks to enjoy himself when I'm present, and more than once he's mentioned how he wouldn't do anything inappropriate because he's mine. I hope he wouldn't do anything inappropriate at all. Being your heart isn't going to keep him out of being fined. It feels more like he means it as inappropriate to me. Have you seen anything about how they are that might explain his reaction? I'm afraid I'm not as familiar with that side of them as you think, or their family structure and attachments aren't an aspect that came up at all in diplomatic talks. I can tell you that their family units are built around two parents, male and female, and their offsprings. Chryserix? Earther, that would be plural. Earthers don't seem to have an equivalent. Or if they do, I haven't noticed such in my limited interaction with them on the station. The commander was careful to control what I saw of of it and the people there. I don't have a reason to believe he was controlling the impression of their families. It could simply be a consequence of what Jeremy went through. It might have left him with a need to reassure you nothing followed. Gralgiran nodded. That's where I got stuck too. No matter how I look at it, I can't understand it. I'll I'll get I get if he needs me to reassure him after what they did to him, but he's the one always doing it, and when he might have fun too. I don't have answers for you, I'm afraid. Have you considered asking him? He was already uncomfortable when he did it in engineering earlier. I didn't want to press him there. Tonight, I'll ask. Then how about I get a snack while we wait for our bodies to catch up to what we want to do? I have a kitchen and I'm a decent cook. So long as I'm not imposing. Oh, you are quite imposing, but I like that in a male. Sorry, Gralgiran told Kjergirik. The scanner officer exchanged a look with LRR. I was just reporting that scans are clear. Right, sorry. I have a few things on my mind. If you don't mind me saying, Alpha, Filninan said, but just what can be happening in your life to distract you this much? Love, LRR declared. Come on, he has his heart. Kjergirik replied, that's one aspect of his life he doesn't have to worry about. Gralgiran chuckled and drew everyone stairs. Eyes on station, please. They looked at them, declared everything was blue, and stared at him again. I'm simply navigating cross-species differences with little reference points. Didn't they have to fill out a giant report about who they were when the Earthers started the process of joining the Federation? Filninan asked. About who they are as a species, Gralgiran replied. Their biology, physiology, some element of their cultures, but hardly anything about how they view relationships. And I'm guessing nothing about them forcing who their people can have sex with, LRR said. No, nothing about that, he said. He would have preferred that aspect of what had happened to Jeremy remain between them, but considering he marched onto the Earther station with hunters, that should not be capitalized, the story was always going to spread. So your heart's not adjusting to what exactly? Kjergirik asked. I don't know. How I feel about him having fun, possibly. They stared at him again. Why would you matter in him having fun? Filninan asked. He shrugged. Hence why I wish I had more information on them. Have you looked through their ballads? Kjergirik asked, then elaborated. If they're anything like ours, they're going to cover every aspect of their society, even those they didn't want to make public. We have that gigantic database of them filed as forbidden content, which seems to have circulated, Gralgiran said. Knowing who to blame, but without evidence, he'd already done all he could, and with evidence, the quartermaster would simply smile and ask if he wanted to keep him company in the cell. Not that I could sit through one of them, the censor officer said. Or so I'm told, very long, with hardly anything happening, or so I'm told again. You going to report them? Filninan asked, for telling you they're watching contraband? It isn't contraband, Gralgiran said. It was simply acquired illegally, and while we were shepherding the Earthers in the Federation, and since it happened while we were conducting an illicit hunt within their territory, it was safer not to have the information propagating. So it's now safe for us to watch their ballots? LRR asked. No, Kjergirik said emphatically. Didn't you hear what I said? They are boring. I sat through the tale of Artarim Doricaliarim, and that had me on the edge of my seat for the whole 20 minutes compared to the hours of nothing in the Earther's ballad. Hours? The pilot asked. What takes place in a ballad for hours? Nothing, the sensor officer said in exasperation. And you hate our alphas so much, the comm officer, that you want him to torture himself with them? I'm just saying that if he's that desperate, there's one source of information he can investigate. I'll consider it, Gralgiran said. The idea had merit, and you know what? The idea had merit, and he wouldn't be watching to be entertained, so the lack of content wouldn't bother him. This was nothing more than sniffing through a pile of evidence for the nugget that would bring a hunt to its conclusion. And that concludes chapter 65 of The Captain's Heart. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter will be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read this story, it is available on Ream Story. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch and YouTube. And yeah, links are in the notes. And with that, I shall wish you a good day.